When it rains, it pours for the San Francisco 49ers as they have a very serious injury that has fallen upon Brandon Aiyuk. As we know, after the game against the Chiefs, it was feared to believe that he has a torn ACL. Not only is it a torn ACL, but it's actually much worse than we originally anticipated. So, boy, it was already tough when we thought it was just a torn ACL. Now, it appears it's even worse than that. So, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about how the San Francisco 49ers, what the outlook is for the rest of the season. How do they overcome this injury, and how do they get back on track? So, let's get into it all right now. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Love to see it. All right, let's get into it and then we will react accordingly. Let's talk about again the news that we already know and then the additional news that literally just dropped right as I was about to hop on. So, as we do know, Brandon Aiyuk tore his ACL. And we were anticipating that after you saw the clip of his knee getting hit and bending in the way it was after a low hit by number 27 on the Chiefs. Just got his, BA got his foot locked into the turf, hits low, knee just kind of buckled out on him. And so we were anticipating that it was going to be an ACL tear. It is an ACL tear, but we're also just finding out as well from Ian Rappaport that it is also an MCL tear and could be additional damage to the knee. So, uh, this is really unfortunate for BA. Just a tough situation to have to go through to be able to, be finally starting to ascend a bit. I think of the performance he had against the Arizona Cardinals and trying to get back on track after not having a training camp. Unfortunately, due to a tough hit, he now has some big injury ramifications going on with his knee. So again, ACL tear sucked, but now you add the MCL tear, and on top of that, potential additional damage that could potentially put his availability for the start of the 2025 season in jeopardy. So, boy, this is. I know there's a lot of emotions. I know 49er fans, they're very passionate about this team. And I also know that 49er fans have gone through a lot of trauma when it comes to, rooting for this team because 49er fans are very passionate and they put their heart and soul into this game. And so when things don't go as planned and the team doesn't perform as expected, it can really, be a down in the dumps. But I do think it is important to remember that even though, you're all fans of the San Francisco 49ers, that is a human being underneath that helmet. That is a guy who has got a family, he's got a fiance, he's got a son, um, mom and dad, friends. The crazy part about it is his fiance and his friend group were sitting front row right behind the 49ers bench. And you could see in one of the videos where he was getting carted to the locker room, he was like gesturing to his knee and he was talking to his fiance, and man, just what a tough situation to go through. I understand that you might not be, very happy with the performance and some of the stuff that went on this offseason, but that doesn't change the fact that this is a guy that is a part of the 49ers family, and he is a part of the fabric of this roster, fabric of this team, and you got to feel bad for him, man. Like, I get it if if you don't necessarily in one hand love the production that you got out of him this year, but at the other hand, you got to be a human, and you have to be able to recognize that this is a tough situation. And we've talked about it many times on this channel. Whether you're a member of the 49ers, whether you're a member of another team, we never wish injury on anyone. That's just not something that you do. And you don't celebrate injuries, you don't wish for injury. um, and if you do, then I unfortunately don't think that this is the channel for you. I don't think that this is where you belong, because I don't subscribe to that type of behavior, and to me, that's just being super emotional about a football game. Like, relax, pal. Like, this guy, there's a reason why these players fight for the contracts that they try to get, is for these exact reasons. We don't know what the ramifications are of this injury and what will come of it. So again, there's multiple ways to look at this, and I can understand that when we look at the production and we break that down, we're like, oh, we would love to see more. We would have loved to not see the drama of the offseason go down. But at the end of the day, that's BA, man. That's Aiyuk. Like, that's our guy. Um, I get it, man. Like, you might not have liked what it went down, but that's still our guy, and at least I can say that for myself. I feel bummed for him. That's the only way I can say it, man. Um, Especially with how this season started. You put yourself into his shoes and his perspective. What I know from BA, with talking to him and getting to know him a little bit, is he just likes the ball, man. He just wants the ball. He just wants the ball, and he wants to, um, play the best of his ability. And I can guarantee you're frustrated by, some of the production. I can guarantee you he's frustrated with the production so far as well. So, again, I just felt like I needed to say that, because I've seen some of the comments and seen some of the people, like, being like, "Oh, good," like he like, shut up, man. Like, come on. Like, let show some class. Like, man, this fan base, I love you, and at the same time, man, you guys make me want to pull my hair out sometimes. Uh it's just like, just just come on. Like, let's focus. Let's understand what's at play. And listen, man, the 49ers just lost one of their top guys. The 49ers offense, as we saw against the Kansas City Chiefs, was not up to par, right? It wasn't up to standard. And now you lose Brandon Aiyuk, and now that becomes significantly more challenging. Um, you know what I'm saying? And that is a situation that you're going to have to overcome now. And with Debo Samuel, you know, being banged up, wasn't able to go, you're now going to have to rely on guys like Ricky Pearsall, who just made his NFL debut last week. Jacob Cowing, obviously, we've seen with Jacob Cowing, he's got some potential, just needs more opportunities. Now he's going to get those opportunities. And on top of that, Chris Conley is going to have to play more. And also, Ronnie Bell is going to have to play more, unless the San Francisco 49ers go out and make a trade. So I've seen a lot of conversations about, are the 49ers buyers or sellers um, at the trade deadline. This is how I look at it from a 49ers perspective. From the 49ers perspective, internally inside that building in Santa Clara, until they are mathematically eliminated from playoff contention, I do believe this team will be a buyer. I really think they're going to do everything in their power to try to turn this around. And that's what football is. Football at its core is the ability to be able to overcome adversity. And the San Francisco 49ers have been hit with a lot of adversity this season. And it's kind of been a trickle. It's from the Super Bowl, the awful Super Bowl loss into uh what it's into what we have now. And they got to figure it out, or else this season will be a lost season. And that is the last thing that you want from this team. So, tough situation, man. But I do think that the 49ers could potentially go out and try to buy a wide receiver. So you would have to think that they are going to be in the market for someone like a DeAndre Hopkins, potentially a Deontay Johnson. We'll have to see, but they're going to have to go out and do something because I don't think you can rely on Ronnie Bell. I've been trying to kind of like let's see with Ronnie, and I saw Kyle Shanahan put the blame on Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy took the blame for the throw. You go back and you watch the clip. I understand why Brock threw what he threw. He wasn't on the same page with Ronnie Bell. Ronnie Bell looked like he was angling toward the sideline and he cut off the route. And so who's at fault there? I don't know, but I understand why Brock threw it. Brock threw it based on the angle that Ronnie Bell was on. And so there was some kind of miscommunication there. And it turned out to be a massive play in the game. And at the end of the day, it's like you got to be able to rely on these players. When your number is called and you get an opportunity, you got to take advantage of it. And again, I don't expect Brock or Kyle to really put it on anyone else other than the quarterback. I think we all understand that in this league, the quarterback is the leader of the locker room. He's got to be the guy that takes ownership and accountability for everyone, even if it's not his fault. So it could have been his fault. There is a range of outcomes where I don't know, he made a mistake on what the potential route should have been. But at the end of the day, man, it's a trend. And unfortunately, I just think that with the 49ers already going to have to rely on their rookies much more than they most likely anticipated, you probably got to go out and you got to get a veteran to fill that role that was left by Brandon Aiyuk. So, whew, what a again, we talked about an insult to injury for this game against the Chiefs. I feel gutted for BA. I'm sure inside that locker room they feel the same way. Um, losing a guy, especially underneath those circumstances, and they know they needed BA to be able to contribute to these wins and contribute to getting back. So they're gonna have to figure something out for sure. But I'm not sure that the 49ers have this mentality. I understand why some fans would potentially be thinking about this, but you have to think about it from the perspective of Kyle and John aren't going to necessarily just roll over. They're going to continue to try to stay competitive and they're going to try to turn this around. And as long as they're not mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, and they understand. You think of any team, and I don't think that just because what they've been through in the past necessarily means that they're going to do it in the future. But you also have to understand the correlation of this team has started. They've been 3-4 multiple times in their tenure, and they've made it to the playoffs. So you have to keep in mind the mentality at play is going to be much different than the mentality outside the building. The mentality inside the building is we've been here. It's not ideal, but if we start playing better and we execute and we do the right things, the 49ers could get back on track. Now, I know it doesn't feel like that. Right now, it feels like the 49ers are spiraling. It feels like the 49ers are heading into a scenario where it feels like everything is just going bad at the worst time. I know exactly how it feels for most of the fans right now. And I feel it too. I feel it creeping in a little bit. I'm like, well, what are we really doing? Because now we have a 7-game sample size on the season, and the 7-game sample size to me is this team doesn't have an identity. This team doesn't have, especially offensively. And that's, I think, the most concerning part is I get it. You've been dealing with injuries, you've been dealing with things, right? But at the end of the day, it just doesn't feel like we have a consistent identity as a group. And that's one of the big things about football is like knowing who you are as a group, as a unit, how you go about winning, how you go about executing. And I don't see it right now. To me, and I keep saying it, their identity is woulda, coulda, shoulda. Um, should have beat the Rams, should have beat the Cards. You probably should have beat the Chiefs. Honestly, the Chiefs offense played probably about equally as bad as the 49ers. They just made the crucial plays when it mattered the most. But they didn't really the 49ers defense did a really, obviously as the game continued, things started to slip a little bit. But if the 49ers were able to actually have some form of complementary football, the defensive performance, you know, wouldn't have gone to waste. To keep that offense to that spot, to keep your team in it and get down to 2 points. Um, that's the frustrating part. That is the frustrating part. And this is the part that, again, I still don't believe that the 49ers are completely cooked just yet. I still think there is a range of outcome where they can get this thing back on track. They win enough games, they get hot at the right time, they get some pieces back. Obviously you're praying that Christian McCaffrey returns healthy and is still the same impactful player. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, the offense, you get the offensive player of the year back into your offense. Oh, the offense looks a little bit better now. Um, you know, that's what you're hoping for. Um, but as it stands right now, the identity of the offense is, I don't know. I don't know. It feels predictable. It feels like they're not seeing it. They're not seeing it, not getting open. It's tough, man. It's tough. And I think when you're looking at the struggles of the team, especially offensively, you're of course going to have to look at Kyle and you're going to have to look at Brock because that's just the nature of the beast. Is those are the two guys who are going to get all the credit when you have success, and they're going to get all the credit as well when you slip and you struggle. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. So um, They don't have time, man. They really don't have time. Uh Big game against the Cowboys coming up, because if you don't beat the Cowboys and you go 3-5 headed into the bye, that's that's a challenge. That's where you really say, "Oh boy, now, now we might be cooked." So I don't know what it is when I'm watching that game against the Kansas City Chiefs, and I'm still working through the tape. It just feels like an offensive mental block. It feels like, I don't know, man. Again, I'm still working through the tape, but it just feels like I'm not seeing I'm not seeing the creative offensive play calling that I used to see. I feel like they become a little bit predictable, and in regards to some play calls and how they're getting guys open, it just not a lot of guys open. Like, I got a play queued up where it's Brock Purdy's first interception, and it's play action naked boot, and it's throw the ball or get sacked, and he throws it to the only somewhat conceivably open wide receiver, and it's Kyle Juszczyk running across the middle, but there's safety over the top, and he just undercuts the route. It was like there's nowhere to go with the football. So he's either going to have to just take a sack for a massive, like, 10-yard loss, or he's going to try to throw the ball up and to have someone make a play. And it's like, yeah, is that a bad throw? Yeah, it's not a great throw. But you also look at the entire offense. There's no one open. There's not one soul open. Um, so it's like, is that execution? Is that scheme? Is that just better scheme by the Chiefs defense? Um, and I think a lot of it has to do with the Chiefs. Chiefs had the 49ers number defensively. They're an elite defensive group. We knew that coming in. Um, but it's like there aren't very many options for this offense. They're just not as dynamic feeling as they once were, and hopefully that's just a symptom of, I don't know, maybe Christian McCaffrey being out, and they're just having to work through uh, some things, but um, not just today. That game, yeah, it wasn't just that game. I agree. I think even in the losses that the 49ers have had, you have seen some glimpses where the offense should be performing at a higher level. The 49ers offense should be executing at a higher level. We Interesting play calls at interesting times. It's so I definitely share some of the frustrations that you guys have, for sure. Um, and it's tough, man. It's tough. But you got to execute. You got to play at a high level. You got to have creativity in your offensive scheme. Like, whenever the 49ers have had their backs against the walls, they've come up with something. They have been able to find some wrinkle that is able to kind of get the offense moving forward, because let's not forget, like, when these losses have occurred in previous seasons where they've been 3-4. A lot of the time you had like Jimmy Garoppolo as your quarterback, and I still believe Brock is a better quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo. Um, but they would find these ways to exploit defenses, right? That was one of the calling cards of what made Kyle Shanahan uh, regarded as one of the best coaches in the league, is that it didn't matter what the defense would show you, the 49ers offense would be able to counter it. They would have an answer. They would try to get you into certain looks, and then they would be able to exploit that look. I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing Kyle like getting a look and then having an answer for it and being able to like find a way to attack these defenses. It just feels like right now, at least against the good teams, against the good defenses, the good defenses are attacking the 49ers offense. And the 49ers offense has just been trying to hang on for dear life. Trade for Alec Pierce. I like Alec Pierce. Um, I don't know if the Colts will trade him, but it would be worth a call. But yeah, I don't know if I don't know if the Colts will trade him. I believe it was a second round draft pick. I believe he played at Cincinnati. I remember I liked him coming out. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think it would make a, a lot more sense to go veteran route, just because if you get a young player, then you're potentially talking about having to pay him. I think you need to get someone who can come in for maybe a year or two, um, that it has a veteran mindset that can pick up a new offense quickly. Someone who can. Alec Pierce is only a second year player. He's kind of getting a groove with the Colts. He's definitely shown signs of promise, but also I think you need kind of a I think you need a veteran presence uh, for a wide receiver. Um, you need the mentality. You need someone who's been there, who's done that, who can come in and this is actually to me, I think, I haven't thought about this, but yeah, if you get Christian Kirk, he's a guy who can win in short area. He's a veteran. He's savvy. He knows how to get open. He's quick. He feels like a guy that could. I actually like the Christian Kirk one because I think he could all. He's also like 27, 28. Um, I think you could probably get him at a decent amount. I do actually think Christian Kirk would be that's actually not a bad name, because again, when you look at it, he's obviously not the best. He's not going to be the greatest wide receiver, but he's going to be a guy that I think you could utilize in the scheme. Delvin says, "How far ahead is the AFC from NFC? Is it big or not?" I mean, I think the AFC is a little bit more loaded, especially in regards to the quarterback position. I think the NFC is a little bit down, especially when you look at the NFC West. I mean, there was a point when the NFC West was the best division in football. I don't think it's the best division in football right now. You look at Arizona, you look at the Rams, you look at Seattle, and you look at us. I don't think we're the best division in football. So I would say the AFC is better right now for sure. Um, but yeah. So I would say the AFC is definitely ahead of the NFC currently at the moment. So we will see though what the 49ers do. I think the biggest thing after this game is seeing how they react. Um, Brad, let's be real for a second. How close are we to burning this thing down? I think for the 49ers to burn this thing down, meaning I think that would be what a GM head coach reset would potentially be being mathematically eliminated from the playoffs and then just a spiral. If they lose every opportunity to get to the playoffs this year and then they continue to play poorly, I again ranges of outcomes. There's all kinds of ranges of outcomes. I still believe we are in the range of outcome where they can get this back on track. But if we're going to talk about the range of outcome of what happens if things take a turn, um, it could be if they're mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, you know. But unfortunately, I don't know if that time will come before the trade deadline. So I don't necessarily see the 49ers being sellers at the deadline unless it's maybe one player or two player here's to get like a swap unless you go and get somebody else. Um, but I do think that with Kyle at you got to remember if they're burning it all down, that means they're getting rid of Kyle. And as it stands right now, Kyle's still in charge. He's still the head guy. And so Kyle is going to do whatever he can to not only save the season, but of course, save his job. Kyle doesn't want to be fired. Kyle doesn't want this thing to go downhill. So what Kyle is going to do is going to try to make whatever moves he can to keep this thing afloat. That's honestly how I see it. So for it to go completely south, I think you would have to have a disastrous spin out. You would have to have a disastrous spin out where they are like mathematically eliminated by the play from the playoffs in like the next four weeks, like when you have like half a season with nothing to play for, then I think maybe you're actually maybe entertaining those questions. Um, you guys know that up until this point, I have never entertained the fire Kyle Shanahan narrative. That's never been something that I believe on would be a fix of anything. I do think that there are multiple teams in the NFL who would fire their head coach today for Kyle Shanahan. So again, I don't think that Kyle necessarily, if he were to get fired, that shakes up everything. Like I don't think you look at that as like, oh, quick fix. We just get some other hot shot, coordinator in here, and boom, we're back. Like that's not a foregone conclusion. And so I think if you're a 49er fan, this is the way that I'm looking at it. I understand being emotional and being very upset with how everything has panned out. The 49ers haven't been perfect. They've made bad draft picks. They've made bad trades. They've made poor decisions. They've lost big games, but they have also found a lot of success. They've also drafted a lot of really good players, a lot of future Hall of Famers. They've made really good trades, like for Trent Williams. Um, it goes both ways. It's a dual-edged sword. They haven't been perfect, but they've also made a lot of really good moves, and they've also drafted a lot of really good talent. And they've also produced a lot of really good coaches as well, and front office executives. So that to me tells me that they're doing something right, but they also they're just getting hit. They're getting punched in the mouth right now, and they don't have a counter punch. That's where like I'm struggling, with this season is when they get punched, I'm not seeing the counters. I'm not seeing the head movement, again making a terrible analogy. I'm not seeing like it's just like they're taking shots to the chin and they're just like eating these punches on the chin. And it's like, where are the counter moves? Where are, the it just feels like we're slipping a little bit. And I think what has been commonly said is they're just not playing to the standard of the San Francisco 49ers. Um, they're really not. Um, and I get it. Like I get the frustration that comes along with that. Um, I see someone talking about uh half the team being injured for the 49ers, which is true. It's a true statement. Talanoa Hufanga is out, Drake Greenlaw's out, Hargrave is out. On the defensive side, they obviously lost Aiyuk, they obviously lost Debo. They don't have Christian McCaffrey. So, yes, while there are some pretty uh significant injuries, um and just like you can see the thing, so this is my comparison to that. This is my comparison to that. When we were watching the Chiefs on offense, they were coming up with some creative play calling, right? The end arounds. They were finding ways to exploit the 49ers defense, even with what they had or lack thereof. They did like there's a world that exists that the Chiefs come out with Hollywood Brown, Rasheed Rice, and Xavier Worthy as their wide receiver three, and they have Isaiah Pacheco. Yeah, that game looks probably a lot differently from a offensive complexion standpoint. But even regardless of those missing pieces, they were still able to find creativity within what they had. They were finding opportunities to get speed to the edge. They were creating outside of structure, within structure. They were making things happen, even with the interceptions, even with the miscues, even with their bad play. There was at least some creativity that they were able to unleash. And I think of the end arounds, right? And I didn't see the same level of creativity on the 49ers side, which I know they're capable of. We've seen we've seen what they've been able to accomplish before in regards to creative play calling and things like that. Like I said, taking advantage of the defense and what they show you, but again, it feels like the offense is just trying to withstand the opposing defense opposed to attacking the you know, the opposing defense. So I think that's a part of it. I think that's a part of it. Um, so I think two things can be true. They're injured, they're hurt, um, but I think they could also be better. Right. I was able to watch some of the interceptions that Brock had, and they were not typical. They weren't, to me, it wasn't typical of Brock. Throwing into double coverage, throwing into some of the lanes he was throwing into. I was like, okay, I can also understand why some people were upset with Brock and his performance against the Chiefs, because I saw some things that weren't we've been breaking down Brock Purdy tape on this channel since 2022, and I saw some things from Brock in that game where I'm like, damn, I don't know if I've ever seen that, and he did it multiple times. I think the pick towards Ronnie Bell, that to me is clearly a miscommunication. I'm less concerned about that from an ability standpoint, right? That was a miscommunication between him and Bell. Whoever's at fault, there was a miscommunication. When it comes to the one throw into the end zone, he got hit, but he was still throwing into double coverage. And then that one to Kittle, he was throwing into like quadruple coverage. So those are like it's just like, oh, okay, well, that that didn't that didn't seem typical to me. Those were outliers in Brock's game. That to me isn't the normalcy of what we tend to see. So um I don't know, man. It was just a weird game. It was a weird game. Weird vibes, weird energy. When they needed a yard, they couldn't get one. Um, Drives stalling out. It's everyone though. Like it's everyone. It's just tough, man. I get it. I get the frustration. I get why people are upset. I think Brock. I do. I think Brock was desperate. I don't think there were answers. I think that's part of it. Is like that's kind of where I'm like looking at Kyle to be a little bit more creative. It's like Brock doesn't have any answers. Everyone is covered. And he's just hoping someone goes out and makes a play, right? Part of being a quarterback is sometimes you got to throw it up and you got to hope your guy's going to make a play. Um, and I'm like still even like searching through the tape right now. Here's an overthrow to Kittle, but no one's open. No one's open. Kittle's completely covered, so he throws far, like there's no one open. Wow. Again, I'm still working through the tape, and that would have probably been an interception. Uh, yeah, dude, it's tough, tough game. Definitely not their best performance, um, at all. So when it comes to what do you learn from that game, and how do you rebound from that? Uh, you got to throw that one in the garbage, and you gotta not do whatever you did against the Chiefs. You have to you have to really look yourself in the mirror. I think as an offense, and I think the reason why I'm drawing the most concern from the offense is because it's Kyle Shanahan led. It's the same scheme. It's the same coach. Nothing has changed. It's Kyle. It's Kyle's baby. And you have pretty much the same offensive line. Pooney's new, but Pooney's been an upgrade in my opinion. Obviously, you lose some wide receivers in this particular game, but I'm more speaking to the early problems I think of the season. You still have the same guys. Okay, you don't have Christian McCaffrey. I understand that is a huge impact. But you do have Jordan Mason, and he's been on the team for 3 years, so it's not like he doesn't know what's going on. You got Kyle Juszczyk. Chris Conley's been around since last year. Like, it's not like you're out here on offense with a bunch of new guys, right? You got the same scheme, you got all the same guys. And I feel like, obviously Kittle, I feel like they should be able to dial it up a little bit better than what it's been. And it's it's a team thing. It's the whole side. Like again, it's I get it. Everyone wants to assign blame and it's this guy's fault, it's that guy's fault. I get it. It's football. It's a production business. You don't produce, you're gonna get called out for it. It's just what it is. Um, it's the nature of the business. These players know it. Um, you know, it is what it is. You gotta go out and execute. You gotta produce. You gotta play at a high level. That's why you get paid the big bucks, right? So we'll see. What about Tyreek Hill? That would be fascinating. Tyreek Hill, obviously, basically an offshoot of Kyle Shanahan's scheme with Mike McDaniel. So you would have to think that he would be able to fit into the scheme pretty well. Uh, but that would have to be up to the Miami Dolphins to want to trade him. But I also do think Tyreek wants to get paid. So that's something to consider. You'd definitely be buying him most likely just as a rental. Um, I think in regards to wide receiver trade, you got to think 2019 Emmanuel Sanders. That's that's what I'm thinking. You need a veteran who's been there, who's done that, who can step right in and contribute. I love the idea of going out and getting a young talent, but to me, I don't feel like you're gonna get instant return. And they need someone who can step in the first week that they get them and get them into the offense to make plays. So that's kind of where I'm at. Is you got to get someone with some veteran presence. I'm not a big. I don't like the Mike Williams because to me he's just so injury prone at this stage in his career, and he's not a separator at all. I'm definitely not. I'm definitely not. I would say no to that. I don't think Mike Williams should be a target. He's probably cheap, and he'd probably come at a value, but I don't. Uh, we got Chris Conley. We don't need Mike. I would say that Chris Conley and Mike Williams are like on the same level at this point. Um, Higgins, I would love Higgins, but again, you gotta pay him. Uh, he's a premium player, so you're paying for him. But not only are you paying for him, but you're likely not going to keep him. So probably not. I think DeAndre Hopkins would be a would probably be at the top of the list right now. I've been trying to recruit DeAndre Hopkins to the 49ers for years now. Um, he he's one of my all-time favorite draft crushes. Uh, coming out of Clemson. Um, I've literally been trying to to recruit him for years to the point where like we've even DM'd back and forth a couple times about like coming through. Um, but yeah, man, he's a guy that he's a veteran. Uh, he can he can step onto the field and he can contribute right away. He's not going to be a guy that needs a lot of time to get up to speed. Um, the only thing you're getting up to speed with him is just rapport with your quarterback. Um, uh, did Cowing earn More snaps yesterday? Hell yeah, he did. He has to. He got no other choice. Jacob Cowing needs to play more. Um, when you talk about young talent, you got the young talent on the roster. You got Cowing, you've got Pierce Saul. You got those guys. You got to go get someone else. You got to go get a veteran. You got to go get a veteran who's played X at a high level in this league. I just really think that's what you got to do. I don't think you try to fill this massive hole um, left by BA with a younger player. Um, I think you got to go veteran, but I do think Cowing, Pearsall, obviously, are going to have to play much, much more. Um, OBJ, uh, at one point, I absolutely would have wanted OBJ. At this point, that ship has sailed. I know the 49ers were very active in trying to trade for him when he was on the Giants. I know they were really into that. They really had a shot at getting him, but I don't think the Giants wanted to trade him to the Niners. So they traded him to the Browns instead. The 49ers are a product of people not wanting to trade their players to them because they know if they go there they'll play well for the most part. So yeah, we'll see. Darius Slayton would be cheap. Yeah, yeah. Larry Kruger wants Tutu. Hey, I'd be for that. I'm a big Tutu guy. I own a lot of Tutu Atwell in Dynasty, so I've been following his whole career. So yeah, I know Tutu very well. I followed his whole career up until this point. Uh, I think he's speed. He's a great player, but I also agree that I don't think the Rams trade him either to in division, especially with the wide receiver injuries that they have. Um, but yeah, like the Lions, the Lions, I think, are what the 49ers wish they were right now. The Lions look fantastic. Their roster is completely built on both sides of the ball. They have a motivational head coach. They got good coordinators. They got best offensive line in football. Hey man, I tell you all the time how I would build my team if I was a general manager. Yeah, if I was a general manager and I had the opportunity to build my own roster, the offensive line would be the first place I'd start. I would have the best offensive line imaginable. I would dump money into the offensive line. I would do whatever I could to build out the offensive line. And that's where I fundamentally disagree, in some of the 49ers ways of roster construction. Um I understand through their perspective, like I get where they're coming from. Like I get what they're doing. But obviously, and I'm sitting on camera talking to you guys, right? So who am I? But I'm just saying, like, if I ever had the opportunity, I would have the strongest offensive line possible. I would draft until I hit, and I would go get. I just think if you have a strong offensive line and you can control the line of scrimmage, it's the same mentality as having a strong defensive line. It's just on the offensive side. It's the same process. It's the same thing. If you have a strong offensive line, you give your quarterback time in the pocket to be able to, work through his reads and not throw under pressure constantly, and which makes them more comfortable and all of those things. And also in the run game. Um, yeah, it helps having a phenomenal running back, but man, if you have a good offensive line, they're opening up running lanes. So, anyways, tangent. Tangent. We'll save that talk for the offseason when it comes to drafting and, we're scouting a million offensive line that the 49ers most likely won't take. But hey, shout out to them. They hit on Pooney. Pooney's been great. All things considered, especially for a rookie. So yeah, it's been that was a tough game. It was a tough game against the Kansas City Chiefs. I think it just scraped up all the PTSD. It is really what it comes down to. And honestly, when I look at the 49ers offensive performance, that's also what it felt like. It also felt like they were having like PTSD throughout the whole performance. Like it just felt like that confidence and that that ability that we're going to be able to beat you guys on any given play, any drive. It just didn't feel like it was there to start the game, and that was like, oh, that's tough. That to me was, I think, the most concerning part. Again, we keep coming back to identity. We keep coming back to. We've been talking a lot of vibes about this team. At least I have. Um, and when you watch that game and you watch the way it went down, it just felt like it just felt like they were in their own head. They were their own worst enemy. And that again is the hardest part about these losses. Um is I could handle a loss to the Chiefs if the San Francisco 49ers were fighting and clawing and scratching and, you know, executing and doing everything they could. And it's just a back and forth. And all right, Casey got him at the end. But that's not how it went down. And that's, I think, the hardest part is because I think the 49ers contributed to the loss just as much as the Chiefs contributed to them losing. So definitely not the way that you wanted. And it's really unfortunate too because it seemed like the energy was high heading into this week. It seemed like it seemed like the players were ready for this one. And I don't know if you guys heard what Jerry Rice said about this game. Jerry Rice said if we were playing like that back when I was playing, we would be fighting each other on the sidelines. So, and again, the point being is they're not playing to the standard of 49ers football. And that's the thing about football is you develop identities, you develop standards, you develop these markers that you hold yourself to and how you hold yourself accountable. And that's what you aim for, that's what you work towards and all of those things. And it's just not happening. And man, when you listen to Jerry Rice went on 95.7 the game and he said that, you're like, "Oh, the GOAT ain't happy." And I've honestly never heard Jerry speak about the 49ers like that. And so I think that's what this season has been. It has been so up and down. It's been a roller coaster of a season, and I think people like are who have played the game, they understand that the 49ers aren't playing to their potential. And again, that's a double-edged sword because when you're not playing to your potential, you have the ability to play better. That means you can correct it and you can improve and you can take the steps forward. That's again part of the problem when you don't play up to your standard and you don't play up to your potential is that you can get better from that. But there's also another side where you can get worse. And that becomes who you are. And that's the dangerous point in which the 49ers are staring themselves in the mirror is this who we are? Are we this team? Are we a broken team? Do we not have an identity? Who are we? What is our standard? We say we have a standard, but we're not playing to that standard. Why is that occurring? What are the reasons for this? They have the talent, they have players, they have the guys. What's the reason for this? And that's what everyone's trying to figure out today. Everyone's trying to figure out why that's the case. And again, I'm looking at everyone, of course, is going to blame Shanahan and they're going to blame Purdy. I get it. I'm seeing a little bit bigger of concerns. And again, this is the thing. That's why it's still a double-edged sword is that they can improve. They can play better. They can execute. They can get creative. They have the opportunities to play better. So that's why it's also on one hand really hard to say the 49ers are absolutely cooked until they're cooked. And that's where my evaluation lies. My evaluation lies in that is rooted in that is that they can still turn this around, but that the timing to be like they can still turn this around is shrinking with every loss. Every time they lose, they can still turn it around. It's getting to like, well, can they turn it around? Or do they believe they can turn it around? And I just think that's where we're at. It's like it with every loss, it's like you get closer and closer to be mathematically eliminated. And if you're mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, then that's when the firestorm will come. You think it's bad now, guys? You think the tone around this team is bad now? Wait until they're mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. Then those conversations are really going to carry more weight. For now, to me, it's still an emotional conversation. People are emotional about the loss. People are emotional about losing to the Chiefs. People are emotional about how they played. And they're emotional about how the season has started. And they're emotional about the injuries. And they're emotional about the lack of creativity. And they're emotional about the lack of complementary football. But the thing is they can still get it back on track. And they could somehow, if something clicks and they can get this thing back on track. We're not. I think we're all kind of removing Super Bowl. Like I think we've been Super Bowl or bust as a fan base, which is also playing into um, some of the painful feelings that come along with these losses. I think it's time to remove Super Bowl. It's time to remove that. Like we're not a Super Bowl team right now. We're not. We're not. We are just trying. When I say we, the 49ers are just trying to scrape into the playoffs. And then once they scrape into the playoffs, hopefully they can go on a run. Is that going to happen? The margins are shrinking on them very, very, very fast. Um, so again, I'm not speaking from a sense of like delusional homerism or fandom. I'm speaking from a sense of until they're mathematically eliminated, that is the thought. That is what they're trying to do. They're trying to win the division. If they win the NFC West, they're guaranteed a playoff spot. And then, as we know, when the playoffs happen, it's all about getting hot at the right time. I know you guys remember those New York Giants back in 2011. I know you remember them. They weren't a good team in the regular season. Were they 9-8 heading into the playoffs? So I get it. I get that. Again, ranges of outcomes here, people. I get that you have zero hope that that is going to happen because of how they played. I'm not sitting here saying to you, well, why would you think that? Why would you have that thought process? I understand that. I get that. They're not playing in a way to inspire anyone. They're not playing in a way to make you believe they are a playoff team. They are not playing in a way to make you even think that a Super Bowl is a thing. They aren't playing that well. They aren't playing that way. They aren't playing inspired. They aren't playing as a collective group. They aren't playing together. They aren't doing these things. So I totally understand why when you say the word playoffs, you scoff at it. Huh, playoffs? These guys are cooked. They're fried. They're not cooked realistically and fried until they're mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. And so that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying is that until that happens, you have to understand the ranges of outcomes. And one of the ranges of outcomes is they can figure it out potentially. Does it feel like they can figure it out? Not right now. No, it doesn't feel like that. It doesn't feel like that at all because of when we just watched that loss against the Kansas City Chiefs. Look terrible. They look like a shell of themselves. Does that somehow inspire you to believe that they're a playoff team? No, I'm not saying it should. All I'm simply saying to you is until they're mathematically eliminated, they are going to do whatever they can. Can they do it? Can they pull themselves out of this massive hole that they've dug for themselves? Can they pull themselves out of this hole that no one else thinks that they can? Can they dig themselves out of this hole where I would say um the fire Kyle Shanahan thing isn't a gimmick anymore. I think there's a lot of people who legitimately want that. So this is a big this is a big turning point for the San Francisco 49ers. You just lost Brandon Aiyuk for the season. How do you respond? Do you have a wake up do you have a wake up moment where you're like, "All right, this is what we need to do. This is who we are. And you get guys back and you win some games? Or do you just fall further and further and further into obscurity, and then playoffs are just a dream at that point? I don't know. We shall see. Only time will tell. Only time will tell. So again, I hope you understand what I'm saying. I hope you understand that the points that I'm trying to make. I understand this is an emotional topic, and I understand this team is emotionally impacting uh our mental health, but we'll see. We'll see. This was the worst game I've seen Shanahan coach. I actually don't think I disagree. I don't think I necessarily disagree with you. Um I I don't think that is necessarily hyperbolic. Um, I I really don't. I think that was one of the more uninspiring Kyle Shanahan performances I've seen. Um, when it came to some of the play calls and when they called it, and not again the not going for it, like it's just like, oh, it's tough, man. It's tough when I think Kyle needs to loosen up. I think he needs to let go and get a little bit more creative. I think that's what Steve Young was talking about a couple weeks ago. He said, I forget exactly what he said, but essentially, when you get into the red zone is like art. Uh, when you have success, it needs to be like art, meaning it is more interpretive. It's not regimented like let's say science. Like he's like Kyle operates in the red zone like it's science, but when you get into the red zone, you need to operate like it's art, meaning you have to be fluid, you have to be interpretive, you have to be able to flow, you have to flow with it, opposed to like being so rigid. Um, so I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I'm not sitting here telling you I've got the answer to fix the San Francisco 49ers. I'm not sitting here telling you I know what it needs, you know. This is again, it's like a soul searching thing. It's what we've been talking about for a while now. Um, they need to figure out who they are as a group and as a unit, and uh, just not seeing a lot of creativity, not seeing a lot of aggressive nature. I don't see a lot of aggressive. Uh, I don't see the genius, that we once saw, right? I don't know. I don't know. But hopefully they can figure it out. But we'll see. Um, I agree with this 100%. Nobody is saving the offense except their own ability to execute and push the chips in with your back against the wall. I agree. The only ones that can save them is them. That's it. Kyle's got to get out of his own way. He's got to get back to what he does best, and they need to get that confidence back that they can beat anyone. So we'll see how it goes. But tough loss. Definitely one of the toughest regular season losses in a while. Which is saying a lot, especially for this season, because they've had multiple tough losses this year. So yeah, we'll see. But again, appreciate everyone, tapping in for this. I know it's a challenge. It's always tough when the 49ers lose. And I just think it's tougher because we are getting closer to that point where we have so many years in the bank that we're starting to ask the question, well, what's next? What is next for the San Francisco 49ers if this doesn't work? And that is a huge difference opposed to what it had been a couple years ago. When the 49ers were bad a couple years ago, it was like, oh, don't worry, they're a young team, young staff, they're going to figure it out, they're going to get it back on track. Well, that they don't have that anymore. They don't have we're a young group, we're still trying to figure it out and get our footing. It's now, or it's starting to feel like a now or never situation. So I don't know if that's how it is internally. I don't know if that's how they feel inside the building, but I would say from the outside, it's starting to feel that way. So Cowboys, that game against the Cowboys is going to turn into a massive game. Absolutely huge game. So we'll see. But appreciate everyone for tapping in on this one. I know it's, again, bad news today with Brandon Aiyuk going down. Just kind of feels like salt in the wound at this point. But I get it. I feel it. And I understand the frustration. I understand just why you're angry. I get it. It's frustrating. I'm right there with you. It's frustrating. But nothing like feeling a little bit better by just absolutely demolishing the Cowboys. So we'll see if they can turn the page, or if it's going to get real bleak. So grab your cookies on the way out. Appreciate you guys tapping in. I'm out for now. Peace. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Love to see it.